And at the end of our webinar, we will take a few moments for some questions. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, just drop that question in the chat. There won't be any live responses. We'll take those from the chat. So let me just tell you a quick little joke as we get started here. Let a few more people jump online. I heard this cute story the other day about God comes to Adam in the garden and says, Adam, why did you betray me? Why did you eat the fruit that I told you not to eat? Adam says, well, I don't know, God. It was the woman that you gave me. And so God goes to Eve, the woman, and says, Eve, why did you betray me? Why did you eat of the fruit that I told you not to eat of? And Eve says, well, I don't know, God. It was the snake. He made me do it. And so God goes to the snake and says, why did you make these people betray me and do this? And the snake didn't have a leg to stand on. So I'm sorry, friends, my jokes don't get too much better than that. All right, the dynamics of effective communication. Let's go ahead and jump into this today. I have a great quote here. It actually is from Alvin Toffler, who wrote a book a number of years ago called Future Shock. It's amazing how many of his predictions have come true. But he said this. He said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be the ones who cannot read or write, but those who are unwilling to change. The illiterate will be those who are unwilling to change. Think about that. Sometimes it's not about what we have learned, but it's about what we are learning. And I think it's important to understand that sometimes we have to actually unlearn some things so we can relearn new things. There's a popular buzzword that's been going around our culture recently, and that's the word deconstruction. I'm deconstructing my thoughts on this, or I'm deconstructing my faith, or I'm deconstructing. But I actually see some of that from a positive perspective, because sometimes it's necessary to deconstruct something that is there so we can reconstruct something that is better, or something that now serves our purposes. What was constructed before was good for then, but we need to reconstruct something that is better or serves our purposes for the now. So I find that very interesting, that change a lot of times is unlearning and relearning, unlearning and relearning. And it's a constant process that we go through because the world changed, technology changes, people change, systems change. Now, of course, we know if you have a biblical worldview, the one thing that doesn't change is the Word of God. And so everything we do, we want to build on that solid foundation. In this course, the dynamics of effective communication, I have what's called the transition model of communication. And when you think about the whole process of communication, it's a miracle that anybody ever understands anything we're trying to say. Because see, every message starts with a message sender, and then it ends up with a message receiver. So it starts like this. I've got thoughts, I've got feelings, I've got a message that I want to send to my audience. That message is going to end up with those receivers. And so it's going to be processed through my perspective and my thoughts. And it's going to end up and it's going to be processed through their thoughts and their perspective. And along that channel of communication, there are many filters. The first filter, I would say, is language. Now, if I speak English and you speak Spanish, for example, then we're going to have a difficult time communicating. We're going to have a difficult time understanding the message. But it's not just foreign languages, but it can also be the language of the culture, or the language of the industry or profession. Every profession has a unique language that they use. My daughter recently became a pilot, and when we talk, she'll often use ATP this and PI4 this and whatever. I'm like, Jess, I have no clue what you're talking about, because she is speaking a language of her industry that I'm not aware of. So whenever you communicate, you really have to know your audience, because they might speak an entirely different language, and you want to make sure that you prepare accordingly. The other thing is that filter is past experiences, assumptions, perceptions that people have. And so this message starts with me, the message sender, and eventually ends up with the message receiver. And for 100% communication to take place, I could replicate in your mind the same thoughts, feelings, and actions that I want you to take that I have. And of course, we understand that that's not even possible. So the art of effective communication is something that we have to work on. We have to work on all these different nuances and be aware of what it is exactly that we want to accomplish. Communication and public speaking has been referred to as the king of leadership skills. Why is that? Over the last 3 decades or so, I've had the privilege to speak to literally thousands of leaders in college classrooms and leadership workshops and seminars all over the world. And the question that I frequently ask my students is, in your experience, what would you say is the most valuable skill needed to successfully lead your team or your organization? And the overwhelming response I get is always to be an effective communicator or to be a better speaker. Because communication is an essential part of everything that we do. And it requires intentional effort. You don't just accidentally become a good public speaker or a good communicator. We have to develop our communication skills, and we have to develop our ability to lead our teams and our organization. All good leaders have been, are, and will continually be willing to invest in their personal growth and development as leaders. And of course, that's why I believe you're on this webinar today. You're taking the time, you're exchanging some of your valuable time with the hope that you're going to receive something that's going to add value to your life, that's going to help you be a better communicator. And in just this short hour time that we have together, my aim is to deliver on that promise. So be willing to learn, sometimes unlearn, and then relearn. Because communication is not necessarily what you say, it's what people hear. We've all had stories where we said something and then that person went and did something entirely different. And you would say, well, that's not what I said. But evidently, that's what they heard, right? So the responsibility as a communicator is to ensure that I'm communicating in such a manner that it has the highest probability of being acted upon according to the instruction or the communication that I gave. Now, what is effective communication? Let's just start right there. In the syllabus for this complete course that you'll have access to, we'll put information about that in the chat today. I have this section, what is effective communication? Because we live in a world where the delivery of information is of foremost importance. So it's not surprising to hear various comments from people as to what effective communication really is. To many, the mere presentation of information is effective communication. To others, being entertaining or humorous is effective communication. So although these elements can be a part of the communication process, they are not of themselves what comprises effective communication. Effective communication is difficult to pin down. It's difficult to define in words. But when a person has been the recipient of effective communication, they know it. Think with me for a moment about a time or some occasions where you have listened to a talk, a TED Talk, maybe a message at church, or your organizational leader, a motivational speaker, and it moved you to action, or maybe even moved you to tears. And you didn't go away from there, and you probably didn't say, man, that was an effective communicator, but you knew that you were in the presence of somebody who delivered a message that impacted you right down to your soul. That, my friend, is effective communication. Effective communication occurs when an individual is able to share a message in such a way that the hearts and lives of the hearers are impacted and changed forever. It has the power and ability to mobilize and motivate the hearer toward a stated purpose. Remember that word purpose. We're going to circle back to that in just a few minutes. Years ago, I was speaking. I was a very young communicator. I was in my mid to late 20s, and I had the opportunity to speak for a church. And man, I tell you what, I just spent weeks in preparation for this, and I was a very inexperienced communicator. And I gathered all the content that I could, and I just prayed, oh, God, help me. And finally, I had my opportunity. It came, and I can't really even remember what it was that I spoke on. But I do remember I had about 20 pages of notes that I think I went through in about 10 minutes. I was just so green and so raw as a communicator. But I did the best that I could. And, afterwards, I was standing out in the foyer as people were leaving. And, people are so kind, and they were just making encouraging comments. They would say, oh, that was really good. We appreciated that. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sitting there, my ego's getting bigger and bigger. And finally, one dear little old lady, she comes out there, and I don't know what got into me, but she says to me, that was so good. I really appreciated that today. And I said to her, well, tell me, what did you get out of that message that I gave today? She scratched her head for a minute. She thought, she's just as sweet as anything. She looked up at me. She goes, well, I don't know, but it was good. And she went on out the door. And I remember that just was like a dagger to my heart, because I thought to myself at that moment, oh my goodness, these people are just being nice, but they can't remember anything I said. And they can't even repeat back to anything that I was trying to accomplish. And so out of that occasion, I remember saying to myself, I don't want to be good. I want to be effective. I don't want to be good. I want to be effective. And that's kind of been a motto that I've had for years and years since that time. Well, a few years later, I had the opportunity to attend a seminar in Orlando, Florida. I'll never forget it. And it radically impacted and changed my life. And that was where I first learned the fundamentals of what we're going to call the SCORE system. And that's what I want to share with you a little bit today. Because see, SCORE is a system of, it's a systematic method for developing a framework, I want to say, of communication logic. It's a framework of communication logic. And the primary goal of SCORE is that you could deliver a message with focus and present it with power. And you can put together, you can present an effective, organized, and logical presentation. So I know a lot of people are excited about their content, but they're so all over the board that when it's all said and done, you have no idea what they wanted to accomplish. Remember, you don't want to be good. You want to be effective. I kind of liken it to playing golf. Effective communication is like that. I've been a golfer. I enjoy playing golf, and you can master some basic swing mechanics and learn some fundamentals. And generally, if you're in decent health, I could work with you, and I could help you to hit a golf ball consistently and generally in the right direction. Or you can just close your eyes and swing and hope you hit a good shot. I actually play with some people like that. And it's better, and it's to play golf, and it's more enjoyable if you take the time to learn some fundamentals of the game so that you can enjoy yourself. And do it right. And so that's really what the SCORE system provides. It provides a framework. And then when you understand the framework, then you can wrap your message around that framework. So we're not telling you what to say. We're just simply giving you a framework of communication logic that's been used by powerful and effective communicators for a long time. The dynamics of effective communication changed the trajectory of my life. If there's any one skill that I ever learned, or one thing that really impacted my life as a leader and helped set the platform for my life, even to this very day, it was learning the SCORE system. So I want to share a little bit about the score system with you, and hopefully you'll see the value in it, and you'll want to take the complete course. But the SCORE, I'm going to write it here on the whiteboard, so hopefully you can see that. SCORE is an acronym, and we spell it like this: SCORRE. So that's not a misspelling, that's an acronym. And it stands for subject, central theme, objective, resource, rationale, resource, and evaluation. So everything begins, and the idea, again, is to deliver a message with crystal clear focus. So like you'd use a rifle scope to hit the target, right? You want to hit the bullseye. If it focuses your message around a framework of logic that will make your message hit the mark and hit it with power. I kind of think of it, when I was a kid, we used to get Cracker Jacks. I'm probably dating myself a little bit, but that Cracker Jacks, they were caramelized popcorns, basically what it was. But inside the Cracker Jack box, there was always a prize. And I grew up on the streets of Portland, Oregon as a little kid. And the favorite prize from Cracker Jacks was the little magnifying glass. And so what we used to do as kids, we get that magnifying glass and we go out on a sunny day and we'd catch the sunlight, and there would be ants walking across the sidewalk. And you could catch the light and you could focus that through that magnifying glass. You could focus that into a laser-like pinpoint focus that was so hot that it would literally fry those ants. Now, I've been delivered from that, so don't judge me now, because I don't have that murderous ant spirit anymore. But that was what we did as kids. But if you move that magnifying glass away, I mean, if you did it on your hand, you could literally burn a hole in your hand. But if you move it away, the more that laser gets broadened, you might have a little warmth on your hand. But if you could get pinpoint laser-like focus, you had power. And so the SCORE system is about pinpoint laser-like focus. So it begins with what I have here is this is not artwork. We won't auction this off. But this is supposed to be an hourglass. So you know how it is with an hourglass. It would have sand at the top, and you turn it over, and the sand flows through this narrow gap, and the hourglass, eventually it all flows to the bottom. So we begin at the top with the S. The S stands for subject. I'm going to write that here. I don't know if you can see that. Now, to choose a subject, you have to start with two things in mind. Number one, you have to start with your audience. And number two is your knowledge. Audience and knowledge are what it takes to choose a good subject. In other words, you're selecting a subject that's going to meet the needs of your audience. And you're selecting a subject that you have knowledge about, you have information about, because you can't teach, or you can't deliver content that's beyond the level of your knowledge. Okay? Now, I know this is a little bit small for some of you, so just try and hone in with me, zoom in if you can, but we're trying to keep that all together. So the first thing to do is start with the subject. We'll get a little bit more in depth with that. Then you'll notice that what we're doing here from the top to here is that we are narrowing. This is the narrow section. We have to narrow this down to a manageable amount of specific information. One of the problems, especially with inexperienced or beginning communicators, is that they try to cover too much material at once. There's an old saying that says, the mind cannot receive what the seat cannot endure. What that means is that people reach a saturation point. They can only take in so much content. And so you're better off to keep your content focused and narrow this down. So you choose a subject, and then the second part that helps you narrow that down is what we call a central theme. That's the C. Central theme. So we start with a subject and then a central theme. So, for example, if I was going to do a talk, I mentioned golf. If I was going to do a talk on golf, golf is a big subject, right? Am I going to talk about the history of golf? Am I going to talk about the equipment in golf? Am I going to talk about the players of golf? Or am I going to talk about how to actually play golf? So the subject might be golf, but I've got to narrow this down to a specific amount of, or a manageable amount of specific information. So that's what the central theme helps me to do. The next part of this is the O. The O, I'm just going to put OBJ. Okay, OBJ. This is what we call the purpose. Purpose. That's the objective. That's what it is that you want to accomplish. If I could say that there's one big mistake or one big hurdle that communicators have to get over, it's not knowing exactly what they want to accomplish. A lot of times people will say, well, I'm going to talk about this, or I want to talk about that. And that's good, but at the end of the day, it's not what you want to talk about. It's what do I want to accomplish? Without a crystal clear purpose, you're going to be all over the board. You're going to have a difficult time connecting with your audience. And of course, if they don't if people don't understand you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are deep. Usually what it means is you are unclear. So clarity is king as well. But you need to know your purpose. If I circled that, but I couldn't make that a target, a bullseye. That's your bullseye. That's really what it is that I want to accomplish. And again, we'll explain that a little bit more. The next letter is the letter R. That's what we call rationale. Sometimes people refer to this as the points of your talk, but they don't have to be points necessarily. But that's the rationale. So now that I know what it is that I want to accomplish, now from this point, I've hit the target. I know exactly where I'm going, where I'm going to end up, what I'm going to accomplish. Now I want to broaden this again. From here to here, I've narrowed this down to a manageable amount of specific information. I know exactly what I want to accomplish. Now I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to actually broaden the base and support with good research, good stories, I'm going to tell them how we're going to accomplish this purpose. So rationale are the points. The next R is what we call resources. And those simply are the illustrations, the stories, the quotes, the humor, anything that you're going to use to connect with your audience and bring color and clarification and motivation that connects with them, that's going to support your rationale. And then finally, we have the last is the letter E, that's evaluation. This is an honest assessment when you complete your score preparation. This is an honest assessment that keeps you on track with my logic. Am I still on track? Am I still on track to accomplish the objective that I set out to accomplish? Now, there's a certain amount of evaluation that takes place throughout your presentation, but this is kind of like that final baseline evaluation. Now, in the complete course, we actually provide what's called a score worksheet. And this score worksheet is a way for you to actually write out subject, central theme, objective, your rationale, the resources that you're going to use, and the evaluation. Evaluation, honestly, you're simply asking yourself, do I know what I want to accomplish? Or how about this? I know it sounds a little bit rude, but do I even know what I'm talking about? Because you can get in a lot of trouble trying to speak on a subject that you really don't know that much about, because there's almost always somebody in your audience who knows more about the subject than you do. So you don't want to try and snow somebody, make them think that you know more than you do. You'll almost always get exposed for that. And also, when I evaluate, I'm asking, now, does this objective, does this purpose, does it meet the needs of my audience? Again, it's all about what I want to accomplish and how do I plan to follow through. So the score worksheet that's a part of this complete course is really, really valuable to you. I want to say this, anyone can talk a long time. An effective communicator knows what he's saying, knows where he's going, can communicate the message in a short amount of time, and finishes on the mark. So maybe you've been asked to speak you've got Dr. Langley, we want you to speak at this leadership conference, and you have 30 minutes. Well, then in that 30 minutes of time, I need to make sure that I haven't prepared too much information or too little information. And so we even have worksheets that help you prepare. How much content can you give in 30 minutes? Here's a big tip right here. The more you know about your subject, the less worried you're going to be. The less now I had one I taught for an organization up in the Pacific Northwest. I did a complete score workshop for them, and one of the ladies says, "I still get butterflies, but at least now after taking your class, Dr. Langley, at least now I've learned to teach my butterflies to fly in formation." I thought that was a cute way to say it. I still get a little bit nervous, and you know what? Honestly, every time I get up to speak, there should be a little bit of tension, because that means that I'm focused. That means I'm engaged. I'm serious about what I've been asked to do. I'm not just loosey-goosey and all over the place. You could care less. That's like a guitar string, right? Tension, the right amount of tension in a guitar string makes a good sound, right? Too much tension and you're going to break the string. Too little tension and it's going to sound like Country Bear Jamboree at Walt Disney World or something. It's not going to be a good sound. So make sure that you have a good understanding of your content. Make sure you know what you're talking about. The more enthusiastic and interesting your presentation will be for you when you know what you're talking about, and it's going to be better received. I'll say this: if you're not excited, if you're not enthused, if you're not passionate about your presentation, then your audience won't be excited and passionate about it either. So make sure you know your content well, and that will go a long ways toward helping you overcome nerves when you're speaking in public. Public speaking is still, every time they take a poll, every time they do put out new data, public speaking is always right. If it's not number one, it's always in the top 3 of the greatest fears in life for people. There are people who would rather die than get up and speak in front of a group of people. They're that afraid. So one of the ways to overcome that is just know your material, be passionate about it, know your audience, and prepare, and then trust God to do the rest. All right, let's talk a little bit more about this concept of a central theme. Okay, because again, you're narrowing your content down to a manageable amount of specific information, not too much. I've heard the analogy that with some speakers, it's like they want to back the dump truck up and dump the whole load and then take off, or just like a machine gun, just fire, until the whole gun is unloaded. And did anything stick? Or throw it against the wall and did anything stick? No, you want to make sure that you have the right amount of material. So if I was going to speak on the subject of love, right? Love is a big subject. It amazes me how many people say, well, what are you going to speak about? I'm going to speak about love. Well, what's that mean? Right? The how to love your neighbor, the kinds of love, the joy of love, or like I said, I'm going to speak about fear. Well, fear is a broad subject. Fear of what? Fear of failure, fear of death, fear of God, fear of the unknown. What kind of fears are you talking about? I mentioned golf earlier. Okay. I'm going to talk about golf. Well, what are you going to talk about? Well, I'm going to talk about how to play golf. Okay. Now I've just narrowed this down to a manageable amount of specific information. So again, what this does is it keeps you from trying to cover too much material at one time. Big mistake. Don't try to cover too much. Or you guys get up and they talk like Alvin and the Chipmunks, right? They're speaking so fast and in such a high-pitched voice that you're like, will this guy just calm down a little bit here? I really want to lean in and listen to what they have to say, but they're just so intense, and now they've got too much material. They're looking at the clock and they're thinking, I got to speed this up, and so it's just not received well, and it doesn't create the right environment for good communication to take place. So the process of choosing your subject and your central theme are critical components for preparing an effective talk or a message. And the more, I'm going to say it again, the more focused that your presentation is, the more impact and power that it's going to carry, just like that magnifying glass that I gave you. Now, the objective, though, really is the key. All right? Subject and central theme help me to narrow this down to a manageable amount of specific information. But honestly, my friends, nothing really of significance is going to take place without hitting the bullseye, without knowing the target. And that is, do I know exactly what it is that I want to accomplish? Like I said before, purpose. I think it was Charles Haddon Robinson, who was professor of communication at one of the theological seminaries. He said this: no matter how brilliant a message is, without definite purpose, it's not worth sharing. Without definite purpose. See, that's the secret sauce right there. Knowing exactly what it is that you want to accomplish. Now, later on, as you become more comfortable with the system, then sometimes you can start with my why, start with my purpose. But when you're just learning the score system, it helps to follow the systematic process. What is my subject? What is my central theme? And then what is my purpose? What do I want to accomplish? Okay? Writing out your objective, writing this out is a very important step that kind of forces you to hit the mark with power and accuracy. I wouldn't skip over that. I wouldn't just have it in your head on a piece of paper. I would write it out. Writing, I don't know, it's important that you take notes. It's important that you write, because writing crystallizes thought. And crystallized thought enables you to take action. So write it out so that it's clear in your mind, and then it comes across clear in your presentation. Okay? And I'll say this: if you can't express your objective in a single sentence, what it is you want to accomplish, you're probably not focused enough to deliver an effective message. So it's an exercise that helps you develop that kind of clarity and focus. Now, in the little bit of time that we have left here, just a few minutes left before we go to some Q&A, I want to talk about what is a good objective statement. Because they're basically what we call propositions. In other words, I'll write these down here for you. I think you can see it. One is called an obligatory proposition. Obligatory, I know that's like I'm writing hieroglyphics, but that's the word, obligatory. And the other one is enabling. Okay, now what am I talking about here? What do these propositions mean? So an obligatory proposition is a statement or a proposition where you are trying to, I want to say, commit somebody to a why. Okay, obligatory propositions always lead to the question why, and it's used to persuade or to motivate someone toward an action or a view. Okay, so if I say to you, like I use the word golf. Okay, every person can. So if golf is my subject, and I can say playing better golf is my central theme, then I could say every person can learn to play better golf. Okay, or I could say every person should learn to play better golf. If I say should, then that's what we call an obligatory proposition. So now what am I trying to do? I'm trying to persuade you or motivate you toward a certain view that I have or action. That is, you should. Now, that's, if you're a golfer, you could probably say you should. But if I said every person, then that's probably pretty broad because not everybody cares. Some people don't give a flying flip about golf. Other people worship golf practically. So again, knowing my audience would determine that. But regardless, if I want you to, if I want to motivate you or shift you towards a new perspective, a new view, or if I want to persuade you, then I'm going to ask you, that's my proposition, is going to be every person should learn to play better golf. Now, an enabling proposition is going to be different because it always includes or leads to the question how. So if I say every person can learn to play better golf, then the natural response from me is going to be, I can? How? See? If I say every person should learn to play better golf, you're going to say, why? Okay? So an obligatory proposition always leads to the question why and always includes the word should. An enabling proposition always leads to the question how and always includes the word can. So let's say that I was going to do a talk on marriage. My subject is marriage, and my central theme is having a better marriage. Okay? Then I could give two separate propositions. I could say every person should have a better marriage. Okay? What I'm doing there is I am using that to persuade or motivate you. Every person should have a better marriage. Leads to the question, why? Or I could change the message. Every person can have a better marriage. That leads to the question, how? That's an enabling proposition. Now, knowing your proposition, is this a can message and a how message, or is this a should message and a why message? Okay. Now, in the complete course, we take time to drill down into this in a little bit more detail. This is a vital part of your preparation, because remember, SCORE is a framework of communication logic. And so you have to have one or the other. You can't mix up a should message with a can message. They need to be separated and put together appropriately. Now, what I could possibly do, and oftentimes I've seen done effectively, is I could do it in two parts. Every person should have a good marriage. Leads to the question, why? And then I'm motivating you, I'm persuading you. Now, all my content is going to be about why you should have a good marriage. And then I'm going to say part two is next week. Every person can have a good message. That's going to lead to the question, what? How? I'm going to enable you. I'm going to give you tools. I'm going to give you instruction and information about how you can have a good message. So really, that's a two-part message. One is a why. One is you should do something and why you should do that. The other is a how to do it and that you can do it. All right? So one's an enabling proposition and one's an obligatory proposition. Knowing the difference will help you be crystal clear and focused and will help your audience take the appropriate action and lead to the appropriate response. All right? So, and by the way, if I say that you should do something, then that leads to the question why. The answer to why becomes my rationale. If I say you can do something, that leads to the question how. The answer to how then becomes my rationale. Okay, I hope that that helps you make sense. Again, we have some worksheets in your in the syllabus. We cover so much content. Now, this is a 10-hour course, friends, and so I'm really truncating this down, trying to just give you a little snippet here of how this can add tremendous value to your life. We cover things in this like using illustrations, telling stories, nonverbal communication. Here's a quick little tip. Communication doesn't start when you get up to speak. Communication starts the minute somebody lays eyes on you. They're immediately sizing you up. They're already determining, maybe by how you're dressed, maybe by how you walk, how they perceive your deportment, which is, do you smile, do you frown? All these things are communicating something to your audience before you ever get up to speak. So we go into nonverbal communication and how important, significant that is to you as a communicator. We talk about the dynamics of humor. Humor is such a powerful communication tool. Here's the good news. You don't have to be a comedian. In fact, very few people are excellent at the timing and the framing of excellent humor. In fact, a lot of comedians, they have writers that help write their content for them. Okay, most of us don't have that advantage. You're not trying to be a comedian. You're trying to get people. You're trying to connect with people and use humor as a tool. See, you're not trying to be a clown. If all you do is get somebody to smile or chuckle a little bit, then you've done your job. But we do a whole session on the dynamics of humor, and that's an excellent part of the program as well. Speaking to the same audience. If you speak to the same audience week after week, how do you stay fresh? How do you stay on top of that? So much of this is covered. How to accept and extend invitations to speak, proper conduct, stage conduct, and so forth. So anyhow, there's so much more. I'm just trying to give you just a little bit so you can get an idea of how this can help you. And if you've taken this class already, because some of you I know that are watching today, you've actually already taken the complete course, and this is just a little bit of a refresher for you. And so I wanted to just jump on this webinar and just kind of give you a refresher about all this as well. All right. So let me just do a quick little. I'm gonna erase this here and take a screenshot of that if you want to, and come back to it. If you can even read that, then you've got the gift of tongues and interpretation of tongues. I can just tell you that right now. But that's just kind of an overview. I call that the hourglass diagram Again, the top of it is meant to narrow this down to a manageable amount of specific information. And then once you have clearly defined your objective, you know what it is you want to accomplish, your purpose is crystal clear, then you start broadening the process by adding your rationale, the resources, and evaluation. So let me give you a little example of that. And I actually just put this together this morning just off the top of my head, but I've been using the score system for many years, and I continue to go back to the fundamentals. Sometimes it's not the flashy stuff that you do that makes a difference. It's your grasp of and your application of the fundamentals, right? And so don't get too carried away with all the fringe things. Get the core, the core of this down, and it will make a huge difference. So let's say that I'm gonna do a talk, and I'm gonna do a talk on the subject of golf. All right, so I just put this together as an illustration. So that means if I'm going to talk about golf, then who's my audience? Well, today we're going to assume that I'm speaking to a bunch of middle-aged men and women who have just picked up the game of golf. They've never golfed before, but they've decided that they want to learn to play golf. So they all are attending my seminar, and I'm going to do this talk. So my subject is golf. Okay? Now, golf is a big subject, so what do I have to do? I've got to narrow this down to a manageable amount of specific information. My audience, they might have some interest in the great players of golf, the history of golf, how it originated, where it came from. They might have some interest in, all the equipment necessary to play. But today specifically, I'm going to talk about how to play better golf. So playing better golf. Playing better golf, okay? So this is my subject. I'll put an S up there. This is my central theme. I'll put a C there. Now, what's my objective? What's my purpose here? That's the O here. Remember, this is the bullseye. This is what it is I want to accomplish. I'm going to look at this audience, this group that I'm speaking to, and I'm going to say, every person in this room can learn to play better golf. So that's going to be my propositional statement. Every person can play better golf. And I'm just going to abbreviate here. Okay? Every person can learn to play better golf. Now, if you've been following, you know, what kind of proposition is that? That's an enabling proposition because it leads to the question, if I say to you, every person can play better golf, then that's going to lead to what question? It's going to lead to the question, how? Right? Every person can play better golf. Now, I could say every person should play better golf, but that's an entirely different message. Now, I'm trying to persuade, or maybe you've never played before, but you're thinking about it, and I'm going to say every person should play golf. Why? And then I'm going to tell you why, and that's going to be the content of my message. But this message here is going to be about how. Okay? So, what's my rationale? SCOR. My rationale are going to be and there's another part here. We don't have time to get into that. That's selecting a keyword. And I'm going to use the keyword fundamentals. Fundamentals. Okay. I don't want to confuse you, but that's another part of the score system, having a keyword. So every person can play better golf. How? By learning these 4 fundamentals. Okay. And I always, when you tell somebody this, if you tell them you're going to give them 4 fundamentals or 3 principles or 5 steps, make sure that you give them exactly what you said. There are people in your audience that will want to jump you and beat you up. If you just told them, I'm going to give you 5 steps to having a great marriage, and then you only give them 4, and you try and walk off the stage, they will go crazy. And there'll be people screaming at you, hey, dude, you said 5. What's the 5th one? See, that's the way to keep people connected. So here I'm going to give you 4 fundamentals. Okay. For me, this is 4. So that's my key. So then I'm going to say fundamental number 1, fundamental number 2, fundamental number 3, fundamental number 4. That, my friends, is my rationale. Okay? Fundamental number 1 is you have to have a proper grip. And then the next R is going to be stories, illustrations, statistics, anything that's going to support why I said you must have a proper grip. I might show a quick little video about how to properly grip the club, right? So I might say how to play better golf based on these 4 fundamentals. Fundamental number 1, you have to have a proper grip. But then, who says I have to have a proper grip? I need to support that statement. That's where your resources come in. That's where your stories and anything that you can data comes in. Although I will say this, statistics, data, mathematics, things of that nature, they are good because they validate what you just said, but they don't necessarily move people. People are moved by emotion. And so if I were you and I wanted to become a better communicator, I'd learn to tell good stories. Use illustrations that are alive, that are colorful, see? Because while data and statistics, they can undergird truth, they really don't move people to action that much. People are moved by emotion. So what you really want is not either or, what you really want is both. You want to move people emotionally, but you don't want to, because all emotions can kind of be like cotton candy, right? When you boil it down, there's not a lot there. And all statistics can just be very dry and dull and boring. But if I have both, then I've got a good 1-2 punch. See, I've supported what I want to say with good statistics and truth, but I've moved my people with emotion. So I'd say fundamental number 1 is you have to have a proper grip. Fundamental number 2 is you have to have a proper stance. So there's a stance to how you're gonna set it up to have a good golf swing, okay? And then fundamental number 3 is have proper alignment. A lot of bad shots are called because I wanted to hit the golf ball over here, but I was aligned over there. So you have to learn how to properly align yourself if you're going to hit a straight golf shot. And then fundamental number 4 is the proper swing. Okay, so now I've got subject, central theme, objective, rationale, my resources. So what I'm going to have is 1 or 2 good resources for every one of these. They're going to show how to have a proper grip, how to have a proper stance, how to have proper alignment, how to have a proper swing, demonstrating that. I'm going to support what it is that I want to talk about. And then finally, I'm going to have evaluation at the end, and I'm going to say, did I stay on target? Did I accomplish what I wanted to accomplish? Am I still honest to what I told the people that I wanted to accomplish in the first place? Okay, so that's just a little, so I could say to you, if you're in reasonable health, and every person can learn to play better golf. How? By following these 4 fundamentals. Fundamental number 1, you have to have a proper grip. Fundamental number 2, you have to have a proper stance. Fundamental number 3, you have to have a proper alignment. Fundamental number 4, you have to have a proper swing. I'll demonstrate that when I'm done, and I might have you come up and I might show you. When I'm done, everybody in that room is going to feel like, thank you, Dr. Langley. You told me what I needed to know. Now I can take action and become a better golfer. That, my friends, is effective communication. Of course, there's so much more, and we can go so much deeper, and some of the things that we want to communicate are literally life-changing. Playing golf is not going to change your life, I don't think. But there are things that are deeper spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, that for many people may mean the difference between success or failure, sometimes even life or death. And so we take the communication role seriously. We take the opportunity seriously. And SCORE provides us with a framework of communication logic. So no matter what your passion is, what you're called to do, where your platform is, you can deliver that message on target with focus and clarity so that people are able to leave there and take action. Somebody once said, application is the hook on which the listener hangs responsibility. I'd encourage you, don't just try and communicate or speak with information in mind, but speak with transformation in mind. How is what I've said going to change this person's life, add value to them, and help them move forward into whatever it is that they're called to do? All right. So I think I'll stop right there. Just doing this is a joy for me. I love it because I've seen how it transforms lives. I coach speakers. I've had the opportunity to hear their testimonies, some from salespeople that nailed, multi-thousands of dollars of contracts because they were able to take their presentation and wrap it around the SCORE system, preachers in pulpits and so forth. So again, I just want to tell you that we will email you in the next few days information about how to sign up if you want to take the complete course. And if you've never done that, I would really encourage you to do so, because I really believe that the complete course can really impact and change your life. Also, we've got other resources and things through Langley Leadership Group to help your organization be successful, to help you as a leader be successful. We just want to add value and pour into your life and be your friend to accomplish all these things. So you can find links in the chat, or if you missed the links for some reason, we'll be emailing them to you. Now, I want to invite Reverend Tim Avery, just a precious friend of mine, to come. And we're going to take a few minutes here and try and answer some of your questions that you've posted in the chat today. All right, Tim?
One of the questions is, how well should I know my audience? You talked about that a little bit, about knowing your audience. How do you?
Yeah, I don't think that you can underestimate the significance of your audience. In fact, I really believe that that is one of the premier mistakes that people make, is they've done a wonderful job of preparing content, but they didn't do a very good job of really researching and knowing their audience. I remember one time I was asked to speak. This was a number of years ago, and I was going to speak at a church, and I had prepared a message on joy. And when I got there, I found out that one of the leaders, a dearly beloved leader, had passed away that week. And so here I was, and I was asked to get up and speak, and you could just, the sadness and the grief in the audience was palpable. And I was just so conflicted, because I had prepared this message that I thought was appropriate, but I didn't take the time to really do what I normally do. I'm calling ahead, I'm checking, how are things? Are we good? Ready to go? If I would have done that to really, know the audience, I would have found out, and I could have adjusted my talk. As it was a very awkward situation, very uncomfortable, and I really felt like I missed the mark of that opportunity. And really, it was all because I didn't take time to research and know the audience as well as I should. Now, that might seem to be a drastic side of that, but even at minimum, you really want to make sure that you can connect with who that audience is. You can understand their pain points. You can understand where they're at in life. Understand, what are they expecting to hear from you? See, and so just take the time to research And don't underestimate the power of knowing your audience. That's a great question.
Another question says, can preparing with the SCORE framework of logic help you adjust if you end up having less time than you were told originally?
Oh, this is a great question, because I can't tell you how many times I've been asked to speak and at a conference or a seminar, and I was told in advance, Dr. Langley, you're going to have 40 minutes. And so I prepared for 40 minutes of material. And then you get there, and then they go on some rabbit trail of other business, or they have somebody else get up and, hey, I want to say something. And before you know it, the schedule has run off the rails. And now you get up to speak, and you were told you had 40 minutes, but now you got like 15 minutes. Okay? Nothing could be more frustrating than that. Now, I will say this. If you follow the SCORE system, you'll know, okay, instead of using 3 illustrations or 3 stories or 3 resources, when I say fundamental number 1, the proper grip, then I might just use 1 illustration. And if I took out 2 illustrations for each one of these points, I might be able to narrow that down. Here's something I want to tell you. When you use the SCORE system, literally, this thing that I just wrote out here about golf, I can get up and talk about this easily for a half hour with proper illustrations, anecdotes, humor, data, statistics for each of the rationale, each of these points, right? Or I can do what I just did for you. In about 5 minutes, I can tell you how to play better golf. Here's what I want to say to answer that question. If you're not focused enough to say it in 5 minutes, you couldn't say it in 45 minutes. That's how significant that kind of clarity is. Now, I can't expand on it. I can't illuminate it the way I want to and drive everything home, but I could share this in 5 minutes and get my point across very succinctly, or I could expand it out. So using the SCORE system really helps you. And I can't tell you how many times that I would stand up there, I'd prepared for 45 minutes. Now I've got 20 minutes or 15 minutes. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to take this out, I'm going to take this out, I'm going to take this out, I'm going to take this out. And when I get up, you know what? I've got 15 minutes. I hit it on the mark and on time. I don't get up there and waste half my time telling you why I wanted to tell you more, but these guys blew it over here and blew up the schedule, and I'll throw them under the bus. No, I don't do any of that. I just get up, use the time that I have. I'm clear. I know what I want to accomplish. I know what the goal is, and I can do it in a short amount of time, or I can do it in a longer amount of time. Great question.
Does the SCORE framework work in most all settings?
I have never found a setting where the SCORE framework does not work. And here's why. Because, again, this is a framework of communication logic. That's all it is. If you can see, some things are I've heard people bring a very powerful and passionate message, but it was so disconnected from logic that all you could do was kind of go away with a thought. Yeah. Well, I remember this, or I remember that, but you don't go away with a focused understanding now of what it is I'm supposed to do, or how I can change. How can I apply this to my life? You're just kind of going away with what we call nuggets. Well, I got this nugget out of that, or I got this nugget out of it. Okay, that's not effective communication. Remember, I don't want to make people laugh. I don't want to make people cry. I don't want to make people I don't want to be good. Wow, he was a great speaker. Well, what are you talking about? I don't know, but he's great. Or they'll say, well, I don't know, but you should hear this joke that he told. And then they go away from your meeting and they remember the joke you told, but they can't remember the whole point of what you were trying to accomplish. It's always about what you want to accomplish. And it's always about putting the ball in their court now to change their life, to do something of significance that's going to move them further down the field in their field of life. Okay, good question.
All right, how many resources or illustrations should my talk have to be effective?
The question is how many resources or illustrations, whatever. That's called your. You got rationale. That's the resources. The resources support your rationale. How many should you use? I would say only as many as necessary to really undergird and support that point. You can't just go on and on and on and on with so many resources. In fact, here's another mistake that people make. I've got 4 fundamentals of how to play better golf. And I spend 25 minutes talking about fundamental number 1, and then 1 minute here, 1 minute here, 1 minute here, because I took up all my time talking about fundamental number 1. And so you might want to take that into consideration. How much time am I spending on each point? That's going to determine how many resources that I want to use to support the rationale for that particular part of the talk. One of the things I think I want to add here, so the score system acknowledges that there are 2 different types of propositions, an enabling proposition and an obligatory proposition. Remember, enabling always leads to the question, always includes the word can, and always leads to the question how. Obligatory always includes the question should, or always includes the word should, and always leads to the question why. There is one other proposition that is very seldom used, and that is what we call a value proposition. And what a value proposition, it's used to compare 2 opinions. So, for example, in the world of apologetics, let's say some of you may remember a book. There was a man by the name of Josh McDowell who wrote a book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. Well, Josh McDowell was an atheist. And so he was schooled and educated in the whole world of atheism. And in his pursuit to disprove Christianity, he found Christ. And so this former atheist who knew all about atheism found Christ and became an amazing believer who wrote and contrasted atheism versus Christianity. So a value proposition means that you almost need to be an expert in both fields that you're comparing. So I don't need to be an expert. I don't need to know all the nuances and history and fundamentals of atheism to be able to share Christ, share the gospel. So it's not necessary. And I wouldn't attempt to do that if I was not an expert in both fields. Okay, so.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. I know you covered this a little bit, but it says, can I use both the obligatory and enabling proposition in my talk, especially if I want to tell my audience why they should do something and then how they should do it? Can I do the same thing or in the same talk?
Yes. Okay, so let me clarify that again. So we've just pointed out there are 2 different types of talks, enabling or obligatory. So the question is, can I use them both? The short answer to that is no, not in the same message. You could, like I said, you could do a 2-part message. The first one, you might need to tell people why they should do something, okay? And because you're persuading them, you're motivating them to leave something that they've been doing and do something different. You should do something. If I tell any of you, if I just walk up to you and say, you should do this, your natural response to that is probably going to be, why should I do it? The answer to why is my content. I could, and I probably should follow that up then with an opportunity to give it a second message. And that is, now that you're convinced as to why you should do something, now I want to show you how to do something. But what you don't want to do is get them twisted up in the same message, because what happens then is that you break communication logic. And when you break communication logic, you introduce confusion, and people don't know, okay, what is it here am I supposed to do? What's the action here? Keep them separate. One's an enabling and one is an obligatory. Make sure you know the difference and use them to your benefit. Do a 2-part message if need be, but don't conflate them. Don't get them mixed up and break communication logic and introduce, not intentionally, but unintentionally, you'll introduce confusion to your audience. And that is not good. You don't want confusion. you want clarity. Okay, we good? All right, thanks so much again, friends, for being on this. I know it's just been a short time, been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope to connect with some of you. If we can help you in any way with your business, Langley Leadership Group is all about leadership development, personal productivity, organizational productivity, building strong and healthy teams. And of course, CLST Global is all about educating and equipping you with content and resources in your area of passion and desire. So we've got both that we can offer you. So please reach out to us if we can help you in any way. Those links are in the chat, or watch for an email from us upcoming about how we can serve you and equip you and add value to your life. God bless, my friends, and we'll talk to you again sometime soon.